Okay, welcome to the science skills lesson. I'm going to focus in on exam technique this lesson. It's important not just that you know the biology, you know the chemistry, you know the physics, but that you're able to understand what it is that the exam's asking you, and that you're able to communicate clearly your answer and answer the question that they're actually asking. So Pep Guardiola, he says that you play at the rhythm that you train at. If you train badly, you play badly. If you work like a beast in training, you play the same way. So he expects his players, as they're training, to play at the level that they're expected to in a match. And I would say that that's the same when it comes to doing exam questions. You can get yourself into good habits, and you can get yourself into bad habits by the way that you practice. And if you practice poorly, and if you're sloppy when you're practicing past papers, then you'll be sloppy in your exam. If you're really on it and you're working hard and you've got an attention to detail when you're practicing, then the same will be true during your exam when it matters. So how can you do that? Well, when you're doing past paper questions, time them. So do it within a set period of time. Put yourself under a little bit of pressure. Try and do it in as similar conditions to the exam as you can. So don't be lying on your bed listening to music, but if you can, sit at a desk somewhere quiet so that it's similar to the conditions you're going to actually sit the exam in. Don't cheat. Don't look at the answers. Don't look at your notes. Just give it your best shot. And then after you've done the question, then maybe have a look at your notes. And really focus, concentrate, give it your best shot. Pay attention to detail. Do the very best you can in practice, and you'll get into good habits for the actual exam. If you don't work hard for Pep Guardiola in training, then you don't play on the Saturday when the match comes along. So it's important that you get into good habits whilst you're practicing. First thing that's important that you do is that you read the question. Not just read the question, but read the question so that you understand what's going on. Now, how many of you, when you see a question like this, automatically come down to here and start reading here, because that's where the question starts? Well, what we're encouraging you to do is start at the top, read all the information, because by reading the information here in this part of the question, it will help you to understand what the question's about, and it will help you with the actual questions that are down at the bottom of the page. Same here. Instead of starting right down here, because you're put off by how much information there is above, start at the top, read all that information, take your time, go slowly, read it twice. Sometimes I read things and I don't understand them, so I have to read them again so that it makes sense. You might have to read it and reread it until you understand what it is that it's saying. You may have heard of command words, and these are basically words that you will see in the question, and they basically tell you what they want you to do. So you need to learn the command words and what they actually mean, and what it will help you to understand what it is the examiner's looking for in that particular question. So my suggestion is that you pause the video just now, take a bit of time to study this and learn the meanings of these command words, and I'll test you out on it at the end of this video. Whenever you're doing a question, always remember bum. So write on the paper and do these things. So we're asking you to box the command words, underline any key words or link words, any words that are scientific that will help to jog your memory perhaps, and look at the marks. Look at how much the question is worth, because that might give you a clue as to how much detail is needed in the answer. Okay, so let's do an example together. So I'm going to apply bum to this question. So ions And that's a strange word. You may not know that. Even if you've done National 5 biology, you might not know that. So don't worry, keep going. Ions move in and out of cells by passive, that's important, and active processes. Now I'm underlining those words because those words automatically bring to mind things that I've learned in biology. So as soon as I see passive and active, I'm thinking about the processes of diffusion, active transport, and osmosis. Let's keep going. The table shows the concentration of three ions outside and inside a human cell. Okay, so I'm going to look at the table just to understand what the table's showing me. So the question's already told me that there are three ions. So I'm assuming that sodium, potassium, and chloride are the three ions. And then it talks about outside and inside the cell, and it talks about concentration. So it's showing me the concentrations of these ions outside and inside the cell. So by looking at the table, by looking at the question, I've got an understanding of what the question's showing me. So if I come down to the actual question now, it says name. So I'm going to box that because that is the command word. So it's not looking for a lot of information. If I look at the mark, it's just a one marker. Name the process. So I'm looking for a process. So automatically I'm thinking, I've already thought about the processes back up here. I've thought about diffusion, active transport, and osmosis. So name the process by which sodium ions move into this cell. So if I come up to the table, I'm looking at sodium ions, and it says that it moves from outside, it's going in to the cell. So I know that there's a high concentration of sodium ions outside and a low concentration inside the cell. I know from my knowledge that movement of a molecule from high concentration to low concentration is diffusion. So that would be my answer for that question. Okay, so here's another example. Pause the video and you have a go this time. You apply BUM to this question. Okay, have you got something like this? So I've underlined cell membrane. That's obviously the topic that this question is about. So cell membranes are found in all of these types of cells. There's the command word to describe. So I need to give a lot of detail. It's asking me to describe the function, which means the job of the cell membrane. So as much detail as I can on the job or the role of the cell membrane. Coming down to the next question, command word, name. So it's probably just a one-word answer, a scientific term. Name one other structure that is also present in all of these cells. So I think that's really important, that word there, all. So I'm trying to name one structure other than the cell membrane that is also found in all of these cells here at the top. Here's another example. Pause again and apply BUM to this question. Okay, so the diagram represents part of a DNA molecule. So obviously the topic is regarding DNA. There's a diagram. Give the term is the command word or the instruction. So a term, so I'm not looking for a sentence, I'm just looking for a scientific term which describes the shape of a DNA molecule as shown in the diagram. So a term to describe the shape of the DNA molecule in the diagram, well, I know from my knowledge that that's double helix. Come down to the next one. Again, command word is describe. So this time it's looking for more detail perhaps. Describe the way in which the DNA strands are linked together. So I've just come up here, I've drawn arrows to show that the diagram is showing that there are two strands of DNA there joined together and that these two strands are joined together here by bonds, and that's really what it's looking for in the answer. It's just a one marker, so yes, it is a description, but it's only for one mark. So talking about the hydrogen bonds that hold the two strands of DNA together would get me with a mark. I don't want to spend much longer on this, but if we were to apply BUM to this question, well, yes, we've got to describe, that's our command word, but I just want to particularly focus on the M of BUM, so the marks. So here we're doing a description. It's worth 4 marks, and look how much space they're giving you in order to answer that question. So this one about mitosis, the stages of mitosis, is going to require quite a lot of detail if you're going to pick up all the marks that are available. So we're just going to have a look at some multiple choice questions, because some people panic when they're given a choice. They find it more difficult. But what we're suggesting you do is use the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire technique and get rid of some of the options. Get rid of the answers that you know are definitely wrong. So if we take a look at this question here, it says the diagram shows a cell with a section of the cell membrane magnified. So there's the magnified section, there's the cell membrane, and they've zoomed in. And it says molecule X is. Now, from my knowledge, I know that the cell membrane is made up of phospholipids and proteins. So all I'm going to do is just score off the ones that I know it's definitely not. Now, you may not know the answer, but at least you've narrowed down your options to between A, phospholipid, and B, protein. So use that technique when you're doing multiple choice questions. So here's another one. Which of the following represents the sequence of events in the production of a protein from the genetic code? So genetic code forming a protein. Well, I know that the genetic code is found within the DNA. That's the starting point. So I know, again, C and D, whoops, completely wrong. So I've narrowed it down again to between A and B. And I might be able to work out the correct order. In fact, I know that DNA, mRNA, amino acids makes the protein. So B would be the correct answer. Just one more suggestion that we want to make is that you check your answers as you are going. So sometimes in an exam, people will answer questions, get to the end of the exam, and then go back and check their answers. But when you get to the end of the exam, when you finish the exam, in your head, to a certain extent, you switch off because you feel that you've finished the exam. So what we're suggesting is, rather than wait until you get till right at the end of the exam, every time you've finished a question, just check it. So I'm not saying for every part of the question, but for example, question 5 has got 2 parts here. So what we're saying is do 5A, do 5B, and then check. Just go back and double check that you've read the question correctly, you've identified the command words, you've given enough detail to get the marks that are on offer, and you've not made any silly mistakes. You're more likely to spot silly mistakes when you're in the zone than once you've finished the exam. Again, here, just another example. So question 3A, part 1, part 2, and then part B. Do all of those questions and then check your answers. Just go back to the start, reread the question, and imagine you're the examiner. Would what you've written convince you that you understand the question? Another piece of advice is that you don't have to do the exam in the order in which it comes. So if you were to list your top 3 topics from the subject, the ones that you're most confident about, the ones that you know the most about, well, find a question based on those topics and do that first. and that'll just help to build your confidence as you go into the exam. There's nothing worse than starting the exam on a question that knocks you and throws your confidence because you're not 100% sure on it. So start on one that you feel confident with, and then work on to the more difficult and the more challenging questions. So, quick quiz. What I want you to do at the top is a description of the meaning of the command word. I want you to have a go at telling me which command word matches the meaning. So tell me why, usually with detail. So why is the key? Explain. Work out the value of something. Which of the following is not usually a one-word answer or just a scientific term? State, name, and identify are usually just one-word answers, usually just scientific terms. Describe usually requires a bit more detail. Give as much detail as possible, usually related to structure, function, or a process. So if you're given as much detail as possible, you are describing something. So if you got mugged and the policeman said, right, can you describe the person that mugged you? Well, if you just said man, then the police are going to struggle to find who it was. But if you give as much detail as you can about the person that did that, then they're more likely to be successful. The advantages and disadvantages of something. So the pros and the cons. That's evaluating something. Similarities and differences. You must mention both in your answer. Spot the spelling mistake. Well, if you're mentioning the similarities and the differences of something, you are comparing. Whenever you are asked to compare, you must mention both things in the answer. So if you're asked to compare the structure of an animal cell to a plant cell, or the similarities of an animal cell and a plant cell, you can't just say that the animal cell has a cell membrane. You need to say the animal cell has a cell membrane and the plant cell has a cell membrane. So you must mention both. An educated guess. You may not have been taught this exactly. And let's suggest why. Applying what you have learnt, possibly from a number of topics. You might need to link topics together in order to answer this question. Well, it's using your knowledge. Look for patterns or trends. What do you think the answer could be? Well, that is a prediction. How did you get on? Well, I did pretty well. Thanks very much. Go back in the video if you're not sure of those and have a look at the command words again. So I just want to stress this again. If you train badly, you play badly. You can't be half-hearted, sloppy when practicing and then just suddenly switch it on and turn it on for the exam. You either will develop good habits or you will develop bad habits by the way you practice. What we're saying to you is set yourself some high expectations, some high standards when you are practicing past paper questions, and you will definitely see the benefits when you sit your exam.